Hey guys, tonight we take a slow, wandering stroll across dusty hills and whispering streets, back to a time long before marble columns and golden emperors, back to a world just beginning to hum with the heartbeat of what will become Rome. You probably won't survive this, well, not literally, but if you try to imagine living here, dodging unstable wooden bridges, sleeping in straw-filled huts, and enduring the unpredictable whims of the Tiber, you might start to understand just how small and fragile we humans were even at the dawn of great empires. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's oddly soothing to know who's traveling back in time with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along the Palatine Hill, feeling the uneven stones underfoot and the smell of damp earth mingling with the faint smoke of early fires. Villagers pass by with baskets of olives and bundles of wheat, their chatter mingling with the low murmur of the river nearby. The air is heavy with a kind of expectation you can't quite name, like the world itself is holding its breath. This isn't yet the Rome you know, the marble forums, the Colosseum's towering arches, the imperial pomp, but you can feel it lurking in the hills, quietly growing in every whispered conversation, every fledgling law, every ambitious patrician eye. Historians still argue whether the city's exact origins were more myth or memory, but legends of Romulus and Remus are not far from the truth here. Some claim they were children raised by wolves, others that the story masks the political ambitions of the early settlers. Either way, the Tiber winds lazily nearby, unaware it will one day carry fleets across the Mediterranean. As you move through the streets, notice the clatter of wooden carts, the smell of unbaked bread, and the rough fabric of tunics dyed with simple, earthy colors. You can almost hear children squealing by the wells, the scrape of chisels on stone as early construction begins. Life is a constant negotiation with nature. Waterborne disease lurks in the river, winters bite your fingers, and summer brings swarms of insects that carry more than annoyance. Yet, amidst this daily struggle, you see the first stirrings of community, elders gathering to settle disputes, craftsmen haggling over tools, and farmers whispering strategies to protect their crops. The pulse of a city forming is subtle but insistent. Your gaze lingers on a small group of men practicing fencing-like movements with wooden swords. The echoes of their strikes feel oddly purposeful, a silent promise that Rome will someday shape warriors who could march across continents. Even now, you catch the glint of ambition in their eyes. You might smirk at their crude practice, but imagine them a few centuries later, in well-oiled legions that will terrify and inspire all of Europe. Quirky as it seems, some of these early exercises were inspired by rituals meant to honor Mars, the god of war, a reminder that in Rome, even play had a divine edge. And the streets themselves tell stories. Muddy paths bear footprints that might be years old, some left by traders, some by runaway slaves, and some by the very founders whose names historians will debate for centuries. You step over a stray chicken, its feathers ruffling in a warm morning breeze, and notice a child staring at you, wide-eyed, holding a clay toy shaped like a wolf. Perhaps a subtle nod to those legendary twins, Romulus and Remus, whose story will echo through the centuries. Imagine a faint drumbeat somewhere beyond the hills, a ritual? A warning? Perhaps a bit of both. You feel the tension, gentle but undeniable, like the world is aware of the seeds being planted here. Each brick, each seed, each whispered plan lays the foundation for a civilization that will one day conquer much of the known world. And yet, for now, it's quiet, fragile, and extraordinarily human. Inhale the aroma of baked barley mingling with smoke, the sound of the river lapping softly against the stones, the rough texture of your sandals against dirt. Rome is not yet Rome, but the echoes of its future triumphs murmur faintly beneath every footstep you take. You might notice how easily the city could be swept away by fire, flood, or famine. You might chuckle, realizing that the powerful empire you know will grow from these modest, chaotic beginnings, and yet, like anyone who rises too quickly, it will be vulnerable, fragile, and full of potential mistakes waiting to happen. As dusk begins to settle, the shadows stretch across the Palatine, soft and forgiving, whispering of stories yet to unfold. You feel the cool evening air, scented with herbs and smoke, and the occasional bray of a donkey. The first stars appear, twinkling faintly above hills that, centuries later, will bear marble temples and statues. You sense, without fully understanding, that history itself is patient, and you, just for tonight, are a quiet witness to its earliest, intimate breaths. The sun dips lower now, casting long, slanted shadows across narrow streets and clay-tiled roofs. You slow your pace, letting the warm, golden light bathe the Palatine in a calm, almost sacred glow. Tonight, the city feels smaller, more intimate, yet buzzing with undercurrents of tension you can't yet name. The monarchy has ended, overthrown not in one dramatic clash but through quiet scheming, whispered threats, and the careful maneuvering of patrician families who tire of a king's whims. You probably wouldn't survive here if you were a commoner caught in a political upheaval. Laws meant to protect often favor only those with the sharpest tongues and quickest alliances. Step closer to the forum, where stone platforms rise from packed earth, the center of early civic life. Citizens gather, their voices mingling in a low hum of discussion and debate. The air smells faintly of livestock, dust, and smoked meat, all blended into the persistent scent of ambition. Here, the Republic is born, not with banners or fanfare, but in murmurs over olive oil, wheat, and grain taxes. Historians still argue whether the early Senate truly represented all citizens or simply the voices of a few powerful families, but even now you can sense the weight of decisions made in shadow, shaping destinies without fanfare. A group of men huddle near a shallow well, exchanging parchment rolls and nodding cautiously. They speak in clipped tones, debating who should lead the city's defense and which neighboring tribes to court for alliances. You notice how their eyes dart, always aware of potential spies or informants. Power here is subtle, wrapped in etiquette and expectation, but deadly for those unwise enough to misstep. The sun strikes the folds of their tunics, illuminating the intricate stitching that marks their social rank. As you wander past the early marketplace, children play near clay pots, laughing and shrieking, oblivious to the adult negotiations unfolding nearby. The scent of fresh bread mingles with the sharp tang of cured meat. You can almost hear the faint clash of iron as blacksmiths hammer out rudimentary tools that might one day equip soldiers in campaigns across the Italian peninsula. And yes, even now, some citizens experiment with small, peculiar inventions, pulley systems for lifting grain, primitive sundials, and decorative masks for religious ceremonies. It's quirky, but each small innovation hints at a culture that prizes both function and ritual. The city breathes around you. Flocks of pigeons scatter as you pass, dogs bark from shadowy corners, the Tiber hums its constant song in the background. Every path you take, every clay brick underfoot, feels deliberate, as if the ground itself remembers the conspiracies and alliances that will form the backbone of the Republic. You pause at the base of a small shrine, carved crudely into stone. Offerings of fruit and wine sit half forgotten, remnants of hopes for protection, success, and favor from gods both known and obscure. Some claim the gods actively interfere in human politics, others dismiss such tales as superstition. You shrug and watch a fly land on a grape, wondering if the gods ever take notice of such trivialities. As the evening chill deepens, soldiers appear along the main street, practicing formations with wooden staves. You trudge alongside them, sensing the slow, methodical training that will one day produce the legendary legions. There's a rhythm to their steps, a discipline born from necessity, not pride. Quirky as it may sound, some early Roman soldiers reportedly slept fully armed on certain nights, ready to defend the city against both external threats and internal betrayal. Imagine lying there, senses heightened, dreaming of strategy, yet hearing nothing but the night's soft whispers. By now, lanterns flicker along the streets, casting dancing shadows against walls, and smoke curls lazily from clay chimneys. The city hums a lullaby of daily life, the low chatter of families, the scraping of carts, the distant bark of dogs, and yet, beneath it, tension simmers. The Republic is fragile, a delicate balance of power, tradition, and ambition. You can feel the potential for upheaval at every corner, every market stall, every quiet conversation in the forum. You pause to look back over the Palatine, where the silhouettes of early homes cluster like a miniature city frozen in amber. The idea that kings once ruled here seems almost unreal, faded into whispers of legend. Yet, in these streets, the foundations of Rome's unique governance take shape: a senate, laws, civic pride, and the concept that citizens, however small their voice, might influence the future. You feel both awe and unease. This is the fragile dawn of something enormous, and the slightest misstep could tip the scales. Night fully settles, stars appearing one by one in the deepening sky. You breathe in the cool air, smelling the river, wood fires, and distant herbs, feeling the calm before the storm of history to come. The city sleeps lightly, aware yet oblivious, and you, wandering through its earliest days, begin to grasp that Rome's journey, its triumphs, disasters, and inevitable decline, begins not with conquest, but with whispers, small debates, and the restless ambitions of those walking these very hills. Dawn seeps slowly into the streets, brushing the clay rooftops with pale light. You step out again, sandals crunching on uneven dirt paths, the air carrying a mixture of smoke, river mist, and the faint tang of livestock. Today, you follow the rhythm of Rome's heartbeat more closely than ever, the quiet, disciplined pulse of soldiers training in small courtyards and open fields, preparing for a life that will be as unforgiving as it is legendary. You probably wouldn't survive a single week as a legionary here: sand in your eyes, sweat in your tunic, and the constant threat of disease, hunger, or punishment lingering over every step. You trudge past early barracks, the walls low and made of packed earth reinforced with timber. Inside, soldiers practice drills with wooden spears, their movements precise, almost mechanical. You can feel their focus, the slow, patient molding of boys into men capable of moving as one. Their discipline is almost hypnotic, the cadence of their footfalls echoing in the courtyard, a promise of order amidst chaos. Historians still argue whether the early legions were truly innovative or simply ruthless in applying old techniques, but you sense that every clanging strike of wood against wood, every shouted command, is forging the backbone of Rome's eventual might. Inhale deeply, the air smells of sweat, oil from rubbing leather armor, and the faintly metallic scent of sharpened blades. You notice peculiar rituals woven into their training. Soldiers sometimes carry small charms or tokens, believed to protect them in battle. Some wear tiny wolf teeth, others miniature bronze figurines, each one a nod to Mars, the god of war. Quirky, yes, but these beliefs forge courage and camaraderie, and perhaps a whisper of superstition that binds the ranks together. The camp hums with constant motion. Young recruits haul water, polish their sandals, and practice rolling formations. You step closer, noting the subtle hierarchy. The centurions' polished tunics and ornate leather straps contrast with the recruits' rough wool. Yet all sweat under the same sun, learn the same drills, and endure the same harsh discipline. Some nights, soldiers would reportedly sleep fully armored, standing watch, ever ready for raids or uprisings. Imagine lying there, stiff as a board, dozing in short bursts, dreams haunted by the distant clang of imaginary swords. You follow the soldiers into an open field where they practice maneuvers with staggering precision. Dust rises in lazy clouds with every step, and the distant hills echo with the rhythmic stamping of feet. A group attempts a test formation known as the tortoise, shields overlapping to form a protective shell. The technique is both beautiful and terrifying to witness, the kind of innovation that will later terrify Carthaginians and Gauls alike. A faint murmur of laughter drifts past, a recruit trips, sending his wooden spear skittering across the dirt. It lands with a dull thump, eliciting grins from the centurion. Even amidst relentless discipline, life finds small moments of levity. Quirky, you think, how the same soldiers who could march through blood and fire also stumble on mud and laugh at themselves. It reminds you that the greatness of Rome comes not only from military might but from ordinary humans, enduring and adapting. Nearby, a blacksmith hammers slowly, the ring of metal punctuating the morning air. You notice soldiers stop briefly to watch, perhaps learning, perhaps admiring. Weapons aren't just tools, they are symbols of power, faith, and survival. and as you step closer, you catch a faint smell of molten bronze, mingling strangely with dust and sweat. These crude workshops will one day evolve into facilities producing arms that span continents, yet now they are small, almost domestic, intimate places of creation. And then you see the oddities, the fringe methods tucked into routines. Some recruits chew on bitter herbs thought to improve stamina, while others tie small charms to their belts, believing the gods watch the tiniest gestures. Historians still debate how much these rituals influenced Rome's military success, but you watch, mesmerized, feeling that even superstition has its place in forging legend. By midday, the sun has climbed, making the courtyard shimmer with heat. Soldiers march in precise lines, shields scraping, leather squeaking, faces set in determination and fatigue. You feel the roughness of the stones, the sting of sun on exposed skin, the almost imperceptible vibration of earth beneath marching feet. This is Rome at its formative, visceral best, a world of sweat, discipline, superstition, and relentless training. You trudge alongside them, imagining the echoes of these exercises carried decades later across rivers, mountains, and deserts, shaping an empire that will stand for centuries. As the afternoon shadows lengthen, the soldiers break, water splashing, laughter mingling with quiet complaints. You breathe deeply, smelling the dusty earth, iron, and smoke of distant fires. The field feels alive, each sound a note in the orchestra of Rome's creation. And as you watch a young recruit carefully polish his wooden sword, you realize the quiet truth. The legions are more than armies, they are the seed from which conquest, glory, and, eventually, decline will bloom. The sun begins its slow descent, painting the city and surrounding hills in soft amber and rose tones. You wander along narrow dirt roads toward the outskirts, where Rome meets its neighbors, the Latins, the Sabines, and the shadowy Etruscans. You probably wouldn't survive long as a traveler here without careful diplomacy or a sturdy sword. Tribes guard their lands with vigilance, and Rome's fledgling armies are still learning the intricate dance between alliance and conquest. Yet, as you walk, you feel the subtle pulse of a city growing in ambition, reaching out with cautious fingers into the lands beyond. The first settlements appear, their wooden palisades rough against the skyline. Farmers toil in terraced fields, the smell of fresh soil and tilled wheat heavy in the warm air. You hear the distant bleating of sheep, the clatter of carts carrying grain, and the muted cries of children running across cobbled stones. Rome expands not through overwhelming force alone but through clever negotiation, treaties, and, when necessary, well-timed displays of military power. Historians still argue whether Rome's success here was due more to strategic alliances or sheer persistence, but standing amid the patchwork of small villages, you sense both. You notice emissaries moving between settlements, carrying messages wrapped in simple cloth. Their presence speaks of early diplomacy, a mix of respect, intimidation, and mutual need. Quirky as it may seem, some emissaries carried small, carved figurines as tokens of goodwill. A Latin farmer might clutch a tiny bronze wolf, hoping the gods favor the message, while a Roman envoy offers a carefully wrapped jug of olive oil, an unspoken pact of trust. In these subtle exchanges, Rome learns the art of influence, sowing the seeds of a reputation that will one day stretch across the Mediterranean. You follow a narrow path alongside a small river, where water wheels turn lazily, grinding grain for nearby villages. The hum of machinery mingles with birdsong and the occasional splash of fish, a rhythm both calming and industrious. Rome doesn't just take land, it observes, studies, adapts. The Etruscans, in particular, offer knowledge of construction, drainage, and metallurgy that Rome eagerly absorbs. You glimpse early stone bridges, crude yet functional, their design hinting at the engineering marvels that will define future centuries. Near a clearing, scouts report back to the city's leaders. Their gestures are sharp, measured, conveying news of movements beyond the hills, traders arriving, rumors of conflict, and the faint scent of unfamiliar animals. You trudge closer and see a small encampment where soldiers train in rudimentary formations, echoing drills you've seen earlier but now shaped by the challenges of unfamiliar terrain. Even the soil beneath your feet seems foreign, teaching you, testing you, shaping your steps. In a quiet grove, you pause, hearing only the wind rustling through olive branches. Somewhere, a child drops a clay cup, the shattering sound startling in the stillness. You catch yourself smiling at the ordinary interruption, realizing Rome's expansion is not a march of unstoppable machines but a series of human choices, missteps, and adaptations. Some settlers adopt local customs, others resist, creating tension that will flare into skirmishes. Quirky rituals appear, farmers placing small offerings to Etruscan gods at field edges, soldiers whispering prayers before crossing into neighboring lands, reminders that belief and superstition intertwine with strategy. By late afternoon, scouts report on a border settlement of the Sabines. You follow the leaders as they approach, the dirt path crunching beneath your feet, tension tightening in the air. Rome's growing power is evident, yet fragile, every alliance delicate, every misstep potentially fatal. You imagine the stakes. A single insult, a misjudged gesture, could ignite a conflict that spreads far beyond these hills. And here, you notice the first glimpses of Roman cunning, a mix of gifts, threats, and careful observation. Diplomacy, strategy, and raw nerve form the early framework of empire. The sun dips lower, golden light glinting off bronze armor and simple pottery. You breathe deeply, smelling earth, olive oil, and faint smoke from distant hearths. The city behind you glimmers faintly, a beacon of ambition against the rolling hills, while villages and forests stretch outward, mysterious and alive. Rome's journey outward is cautious but relentless. You trudge onward, feeling the undercurrent of tension, the quiet satisfaction of small victories, and the whispered promise that the Republic is learning, shaping itself, and preparing to absorb the world beyond its walls. By twilight, you pause at a ridge, looking down at a patchwork of farms, rivers, and palisades. The horizon stretches endlessly, a tapestry of potential allies and enemies. The air cools, carrying the scent of wild herbs and distant fires. You feel, perhaps for the first time, the weight of Rome's ambition, its delicate balancing act between diplomacy and force, cunning and cruelty, chance and design. Tonight, the city will sleep lightly, and tomorrow, it will rise again, reaching further into the lands that will one day kneel, or resist. You drift along the edge of the city as the morning mist clings to the Tiber, and your senses sharpen, ready to follow Rome into a broader, more dangerous world. The Mediterranean beckons with salt and possibility, carrying rumors of a rival that will come to define much of Rome's early ambitions, Carthage. You probably wouldn't survive a week in the shipping lanes, navigating the unpredictable tides and political tempers of merchants, sailors, and mercenaries. The air smells faintly of brine and tar, mixed with the distant aroma of baked bread from riverfront stalls, grounding you in the ordinary even as history swells around you. Across the water, you imagine the bustling ports of Carthage, their wooden masts bobbing, sails taut in the wind, their citizens trading gold, olive oil, and ivory. Rome's leaders watch from afar, aware that this powerful rival holds sway over commerce, wealth, and influence across the western Mediterranean. Historians still argue whether Rome's fear of Carthage was justified or amplified by ambition, but standing here, you feel the tension as tangibly as the salt on your skin. Each wave that laps the shore seems to whisper of inevitable conflict, of empires brushing against each other in a prelude to war. You wander along the river docks, past laborious hauling crates of grain, wine, and oil. Seagulls circle overhead, their cries sharp against the murmur of human activity. You notice early Roman vessels, clumsy, wooden ships designed more for local transport than ocean warfare, contrasting sharply with the sleek, powerful Carthaginian fleets. Quirky details emerge in the form of carved figureheads, lions, birds, and abstract faces meant to ward off sea spirits. The Romans will adopt some of these ideas, learning from the enemy even as tension simmers across the water. On shore, soldiers practice drills, sharpening spears and testing catapults, imagining future campaigns across distant lands. You step close, hearing the scrape of ropes, the grating of wood, and the low murmur of strategy being discussed in hurried Latin. Rome isn't yet ready for full-scale war, but each maneuver, Each carefully timed exercise lays the groundwork for the legendary legions that will one day challenge Carthage itself. Small settlements along the coast watch nervously, their villagers whispering about foreign sails and soldiers' movements. As you trudge past the city walls, you notice a marketplace alive with traders from distant lands, Etruscans, Greeks, and Phoenicians. They barter, haggle, and measure goods with precision, their voices a melodic chaos. You see small amphorae of scented oils, brightly woven fabrics, and strange jewelry, each piece a symbol of trade, diplomacy, and the early stirrings of cultural exchange. Quirky as it seems, some Roman youths try to imitate foreign customs, wearing dyed tunics or learning snippets of Phoenician songs, unaware that this curiosity will later shape the empire's identity. The tension builds quietly as scouts report Carthaginian movements across the Mediterranean. You trudge alongside envoys carrying messages, feeling the weight of their words. Fleets being built, armies raised, alliances whispered into existence. The Romans, pragmatic as ever, begin plans for their first encounters, strategies that mix caution with audacity. Historians still debate whether Rome's approach was purely defensive or an early sign of imperial ambition, but you can feel the calculation in every step, in every glance exchanged among leaders. You notice a small encampment of engineers working near the docks. They test rudimentary siege engines, catapults designed to hurl stones over short distances. The air smells faintly of tar, smoke, and hot metal. Some engineers carry charms for luck, believing the gods favor precision as much as strength. You chuckle at the odd blend of superstition and skill, realizing that Roman ingenuity often dances hand in hand with belief. By late afternoon, you follow a scout as he climbs a hill overlooking the harbor. The scene below is serene, boats rocking gently in the tide, children playing near the water, merchants calling to one another, but underneath lies a latent threat. Carthage looms as a distant shadow, a mirror of ambition and danger. You feel the subtle tension, the sense that these waters will soon echo with conflict, elephants marching across unfamiliar lands, and soldiers clashing in ways both brutal and strategic. As dusk settles, lanterns are lit along the quay, casting soft reflections on the rippling water. You inhale deeply, brine, smoke, and the faint sweetness of fruits carried from distant lands. The city seems to pause, sensing the approaching storm while preparing quietly for the challenge ahead. And as the stars emerge, twinkling over both Rome and the horizon where Carthage lies, you feel the inevitability of history, two powers destined to collide, shaping the course of the Mediterranean and the world beyond. You trudge along the Mediterranean coastline, feeling the cool, briny breeze on your skin, carrying the faint scent of seaweed and salt. Ahead, the distant Alps rise like a jagged promise of danger, snow glinting faintly even in early spring. Today, you are not merely a witness, you are alongside Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general who dares to attempt the impossible, crossing mountains with elephants, soldiers, and a vision that terrifies and fascinates the Romans. You probably wouldn't survive a single day in this march, blizzards, treacherous paths, and frostbite threaten every step, but somehow, you follow, your senses sharpening with each precarious movement. The first slope is deceptively calm. Snow crunches underfoot, mingled with mud churned by hooves and the rumble of elephants adjusting to the narrow passes. Soldiers shout orders over the wind, their breaths fogging in the cold air. You notice the remarkable coordination required, animals guided with ropes, scouts signaling directions with sharp whistles, and men balancing loads of supplies. Historians still argue whether Hannibal's audacity was sheer genius or reckless overreach, but here, in the frozen expanse, you sense both brilliance and peril in every movement. The elephants are astonishing, their massive bodies swaying as they climb rocky trails. You step closer, feeling the vibration of their enormous feet, the scent of sweat, hay, and dung mingling with the crisp mountain air. Quirky as it seems, some soldiers attach small charms to the animals, believing that divine protection will help them navigate the deadly passes. You can't help but smile at the strange combination of superstition and practical necessity. It is this blend that often shapes history's most dramatic moments. You follow a narrow ledge where a sudden gust rattles the columns of soldiers and animals alike. One elephant snorts nervously, tossing its trunk, while men cling to ropes to maintain balance. The path twists sharply, lined with rocks and sparse vegetation, reminding you how easily ambition and nature collide. Behind you, smaller units carry food and supplies, some slipping into shallow snowdrifts, shouting as they regain footing. The tension is constant, but it is tempered by awe. You are witnessing a feat that few believe possible. At midday, you pause near a rocky outcrop overlooking a valley below. Hannibal surveys the terrain, eyes sharp, calculating, aware of every ridge and shadow. Scouts return, whispering of Roman forces monitoring from a distance, yet unsure how to respond. You feel the weight of strategy in the air, the merging of human courage and natural challenge. Quirky stories claim some elephants carried small bronze bells to ward off spirits, jingling faintly as the long column moves through clouds and rock. Historians still debate the logistical genius versus the sheer risk, but you see it live, each step a negotiation with fate itself. The descent into the lower valleys is slower, yet equally perilous. Loose stones tumble, threatening both man and beast, while the cold seeps into every bone. Soldiers chant softly to keep morale steady, rhythms echoing off cliffs, almost hypnotic, almost comforting. You notice the subtle interactions between men and elephants, the gentle touch on the trunk, a whisper of reassurance, the shared understanding that failure here could mean disaster. By late afternoon, the column reaches a partially wooded slope where the sun begins to lower, casting long, trembling shadows. You breathe in deeply, the pine-scented air, the faint metallic tang of sharpened weapons, the earthy aroma of animals pressed together in close quarters. There is a quiet determination among the men, an almost meditative rhythm in their movement despite the danger. Hannibal's army, a blend of soldiers, mercenaries, and beasts, moves not just forward but into legend, forcing you to consider how ambition bends human limits and imagination. As twilight drapes the mountains, you trudge alongside the exhausted troops. Snow softens underfoot, and the wind whispers through bare trees. You notice a small child, perhaps the son of a soldier, bundled in furs, watching the elephants pass, eyes wide with awe and fear. The mixture of human fragility and monumental effort is staggering. Rome's enemies are audacious, the Alps merciless, and the Mediterranean conflict looming closer every day. You inhale one last time before resting for the night, tasting the crisp chill and salt in the air, feeling the tension, wonder, and historical weight of Hannibal's march settling deep into your bones. The sun rises slowly over the Italian plains, casting a golden haze across fields and rivers that shimmer like molten bronze. You trudge through the morning mist, feeling the dew soak your sandals, and hear the distant clatter of hooves and armor as Julius Caesar's legions move with disciplined precision. You probably wouldn't survive a single week in Caesar's camp. Arrogant whispers, sudden skirmishes, and the unrelenting grind of soldier life make every step a test of wit, endurance, and nerve. Yet here you are, stepping alongside history's most audacious strategist, sensing both the grandeur and fragility of Rome's heart. The camp stretches across a gentle slope, tents flapping in the breeze, smoke curling from small cooking fires. Soldiers sharpen their swords, oil their armor, and rehearse formations under the watchful eyes of centurions. The air smells sharply of iron, sweat, and roasting meat, and you realize that military life is less about glory than repetition, discipline, and survival. Quirky as it seems, some soldiers attach small tokens to their helmets, tiny figurines of wolves or Mars symbols, believing divine favor can tip the balance of battle. Historians still argue whether Caesar's charisma or his strategic brilliance mattered more in his rise, but standing here, both seem tangible, almost palpable. You trudge alongside the legions as they march through rolling hills, the ground vibrating beneath synchronized steps. You can feel the power of organization, every shield aligned, every spear angled just so, every grunt in unison, forming a force that will one day reshape Europe. Even so, the human side of this precision emerges, a soldier's hobbling foot, the tense glance between comrades, the whispered jokes to mask fear. Caesar's genius lies not just in planning, but in managing the fragile, stubborn, and sometimes unpredictable human spirit. Crossing a small stream, You notice engineers testing rudimentary siege devices. Wooden catapults groan under the strain of heavy stones, each strike sending vibrations up through your body. The work is meticulous, exhausting, and slightly absurd. Men laboring for hours to fling a boulder a few dozen feet, perfecting techniques that will one day bring entire fortresses to their knees. Quirky stories tell of Caesar inspecting these devices in the nude during early campaigns, claiming it improved morale, perhaps true, perhaps exaggerated, but it reminds you that even the great sometimes indulge in bizarre habits. By midday, messengers arrive with urgent reports, rival generals, rebellious provinces, and whisperings of political intrigue in Rome itself. You trudge alongside Caesar as he listens, nods, and issues orders with calm authority. His eyes sweep over maps, soldiers, and scouts, a mind always 2 steps ahead. Historians still debate whether Caesar's ambition was innate or cultivated by circumstance, but watching him work, it is clear, strategy is as much art as science, and he wields it like a sculptor shapes marble. In the late afternoon, the legions set up temporary camps. You smell the combination of cooking fires, wet earth, and horse sweat, all mingling in a thick, almost intoxicating haze. Soldiers perform drills, check armor, and carry out endless maintenance, while Caesar reviews reports and addresses his men with quiet confidence. There's a subtle ritual to this routine, small acts repeated daily, binding thousands of men into a cohesive force. Quirky as it may sound, some soldiers report seeing omens in birds or strange cloud patterns, believing Caesar's fate is guided by the gods. The landscape shifts subtly as you march, rivers glint, hills rise and fall, and distant towns loom on the horizon. You notice the interplay of nature and ambition, fertile fields promising sustenance, marshes threatening disease, forests concealing both danger and opportunity. Caesar's legions moved deliberately, balancing the raw power of organized manpower with careful reconnaissance, respecting yet challenging the natural world. As twilight descends, you pause on a ridge overlooking a valley where the Tiber snakes like a silver thread. The smell of evening dew, wood smoke, and distant livestock fills your senses. You reflect on the strange combination of human genius, ambition, superstition, and labor that allows one man and his soldiers to shape history. And as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of rose and violet, you trudge slowly back toward the camp, feeling the quiet hum of power, risk, and destiny settling over the landscape. Tonight, like every night, Rome sleeps lightly, unaware that in the morning, it will march once again toward triumph, betrayal, and legend. The early morning mist lingers over Rome as you walk through streets already alive with activity, yet under Augustus, the city hums with a very different rhythm than before. You probably wouldn't survive long in this world if you mistook order for safety. The emperor's watchful eye penetrates both public squares and private homes, subtle and relentless. Still, the calm is beguiling. Clean streets, aqueducts carrying clear water, and forums lined with freshly swept stones give the impression of a city at peace, and perhaps, at its most powerful. You trudge past the forum, noting the marble columns glinting softly in the sunrise. Senators and magistrates pass with measured steps, robes flowing, eyes alert yet serene. Augustus' genius lies not only in conquest but in creating the illusion of stability. Quirky as it may seem, he occasionally left messages written in graffiti on walls, subtle reminders that even the emperor observes, shaping public perception through small, seemingly trivial acts. Historians still argue whether his system truly represented civic fairness or merely the centralization of power under a more palatable guise, but the city moves in quiet synchrony, as if every citizen participates in a grand theater. You follow along a cobbled street where merchants display fruits, pottery, and silk from distant lands. The scents are intoxicating: olive oil, exotic spices, baked bread, and the faint tang of sea salt. Rome is connected now not just by conquest but by trade and infrastructure. Roads stretch in every direction, bridges cross rivers with elegance and precision, and the aqueducts hum faintly, carrying life-sustaining water into the city. Each element demonstrates Augustus' meticulous attention to detail. You pause at a small square where soldiers march in calm, measured formations. Unlike the legions of Julius Caesar, these men embody precision, discipline, and ceremony as much as raw strength. They parade through the streets with drums and trumpets, a living symbol of order and authority. Quirky as it may seem, some guards wear small figurines on their helmets, a nod to gods long since intertwined with military tradition, a whisper of superstition amid ritualized strength. As midday approaches, you trudge along the Palatine Hill again, now dotted with well-maintained villas, gardens, and fountains. The scent of blooming flowers mixes with the earthy aroma of tilled soil and cooking fires. Citizens stroll leisurely, discussing politics, philosophy, and art. You notice scribes recording events and orators rehearsing speeches. Augustus' Rome is both alive and meticulously choreographed, balancing natural human behavior with the subtle art of governance. By late afternoon, the city's rhythm shifts. You hear the laughter of children playing near fountains, the chatter of merchants packing up their stalls, and the distant clang of blacksmiths at work. The streets shimmer under the soft light of a descending sun. Augustus understood that perception is as vital as power. The illusion of calm, prosperity, and civic pride helps solidify control. Quirky as it may seem, some stories suggest he staged occasional parades simply to reassure the populace, blending showmanship with governance. The evening air cools, carrying the scent of herbs, smoke, and faintly salted fish from the Tiber. You notice a small group gathered near the temple steps, listening to a poet recount tales of gods, heroes, and past victories. The city breathes, alive in ritual, labor, and leisure, and yet beneath the calm, subtle currents of power flow through every street and forum. Historians still debate whether the empire's stability under Augustus was genuine or fragile, a delicate balancing act that depends on obedience, fear, and spectacle. As twilight deepens, lanterns flicker across cobblestones, casting dancing shadows on the marble facades. You pause to watch, smelling the night air and listening to the distant lapping of the Tiber, reflecting on the paradox of Augustus' Rome. A world of calm order masking an underlying current of calculated control. And as the stars emerge, twinkling faintly over the city, you sense the careful orchestration of power, prosperity, and legend that will carry Rome forward for decades, yet also sow the seeds of challenges yet unseen. The sun filters through misty clouds over Rome, casting the city in soft, silvery light. You trudge through streets that hum with life, yet carry the quiet weight of history's darker turns. You probably wouldn't survive the subtle dangers here if you misjudged your allies or underestimated ambition, the palace intrigues, the manipulations of senators, and the whispers of conspirators are as perilous as any battlefield. Still, the calm of the morning lulls you, the scent of fresh bread and olive oil mingling with the faint tang of the Tiber, grounding you amid the political tension. You walk past the Senate House, its towering columns gleaming faintly. Senators shuffle in their robes, speaking softly, their gestures measured, their eyes darting. Augustus' reforms have created stability, yes, but also restraint, the kind that suppresses, manipulates, and channels power quietly. Quirky as it may seem, some senators carry charms hidden in their clothing, small talismans of fortune or protection. Historians still debate whether the early principate truly balanced power or masked an autocracy with the veneer of a republic, but you feel the tension in every silent glance and careful word. The forum stretches before you, alive with merchants, philosophers, and craftsmen. You notice the scent of ink from scribes, the earthy aroma of clay, and the faint smoke from cooking fires. Small details emerge: children chasing chickens near the temples, a poet reading aloud to a half-interested crowd, and a merchant arranging brightly colored fabrics. Each moment is a thread in the tapestry of daily life, mundane yet profoundly historical. You trudge alongside soldiers drilling in a nearby courtyard, their movements precise and fluid. Shields scrape and spears tap in time, a disciplined rhythm that mirrors the underlying order Augustus cultivated throughout the city. Some recruits whisper prayers to Mars or Jupiter, tiny superstitions woven into the fabric of military routine. You chuckle at the oddity, imagining how these small rituals might give courage, and perhaps a sense of divine favor, in an otherwise rigid world. By midday, you wander toward the aqueducts, their arches rising gracefully against the skyline. Water flows with soft, persistent murmurs, carrying life to fountains, baths, and homes. Rome's engineering brilliance is subtle here, quiet yet transformative. Quirky as it may seem, some aqueducts were rumored to carry messages in hollow sections, a rudimentary but clever system of communication. Historians still debate the exact methods, yet the ingenuity is unmistakable. Rome learns, adapts, and refines every borrowed idea, from Etruscan bridges to Greek surveying techniques. In the afternoon sun, you watch artisans at work. Blacksmiths hammer bronze, potters spin clay, and scribes copy texts by hand. The scent of heated metal and kill-fired clay fills the air. You realize that Rome's power is as much cultural as military. Art, architecture, law, and public spectacle combine with force to shape the empire's identity. Even small, seemingly mundane acts, shaping a pot, etching letters into stone, polishing a sword, have long-reaching consequences. As evening falls, you pause on a gentle hill overlooking the city. The Tiber reflects the last rays of sunlight, lanterns begin to glow softly, and the chatter of citizens fades into a gentle hum. You feel the paradox of Rome, a city of dazzling order and hidden danger, of profound innovation and subtle intrigue. Quirky details, the tiny charms, the whispered prayers, the small acts of genius, remind you that history is made in both grand gestures and quiet moments. And as stars twinkle above, you trudge slowly back through the streets, sensing the delicate balance of power, ambition, and culture that will define this city for centuries to come. The morning light spills softly across the hills beyond Rome, gilding rooftops, aqueducts, and temples with a warm, honeyed glow. You trudge through the city streets, inhaling the mingled scents of baking bread, damp stone, and the faint tang of livestock. You probably wouldn't survive a day wandering the streets unprepared. Subtle dangers abound in the form of political rivalries, thieving hands, and the occasional disgruntled soldier. Still, the calm rhythm of life lulls you, the distant tolling of bells and low chatter blending into an oddly soothing melody. You walk past the Colosseum's early foundations, imagining the future spectacle of gladiators and roaring crowds. Quirky as it may sound, Augustus himself often consulted with architects about crowd behavior, believing human emotion could be subtly guided by the structure of space. Historians still debate how much public entertainment was used as political control versus cultural enrichment, but standing here, you sense both, the thrill of spectacle and the shadow of manipulation intertwined. The forum stretches ahead, alive with merchants, philosophers, and orators. You notice children chasing small animals, citizens exchanging gossip, and scribes carefully copying texts. Each detail feels significant, the folded tunics, the clay amphorae, the faint scribbles on walls that hint at social tension. Rome's daily life, ordinary as it may seem, is a theater of culture, politics, and subtle power plays. You trudge alongside soldiers practicing formations, their armor glinting softly in the morning sun. The rhythm of steps, clatter of shields, and low hum of commands create a hypnotic pattern. Some recruits carry small charms for protection or luck, a wolf tooth, a bronze figurine, a tiny amulet tucked into a belt. Quirky details like these reflect the human desire for control over uncertainty, especially in a world shaped by conquest, ambition, and the unpredictability of fate. By midday, you follow a path along the aqueducts, their arches casting long shadows across the cobblestones. Water flows steadily, a soft murmur accompanying your steps. Here, Rome's engineering marvels are evident: the precise gradient, the clever distribution to fountains, baths, and homes. Some water channels are rumored to carry secret messages, a small but ingenious method of communication. Historians still debate the effectiveness of these techniques, but you can't help but admire the blend of ingenuity and practicality. Near the city walls, craftsmen and artisans work diligently. Blacksmiths hammer bronze into blades, potters shape clay, and scribes etch letters into tablets. The smell of smoke, heated metal, and wet clay fills the air. You notice small interactions: an apprentice learning from a master, a child observing a blacksmith, a trader haggling over a pot. Each moment reflects the layered complexity of Rome, a city built not only through conquest but through daily human endeavor, culture, and subtle learning. As evening approaches, you pause atop the Capitoline Hill, gazing over the softly glowing city. The Tiber gleams under the last rays of sun, lanterns flicker in the streets, and voices hum in the distance. You feel the intricate weave of power, culture, superstition, and ingenuity that defines Rome. Quirky as it may seem, even small details, amulets, whispered prayers, tiny acts of curiosity, contribute to the shaping of history. As stars appear, you trudge back through the streets, sensing the delicate balance between order and chaos, ambition and survival, that will continue to define the empire for centuries to come. Twilight descends slowly over the city, painting rooftops and aqueducts in soft shades of lavender and rose. You trudge through the winding streets, feeling the cool air brush your skin, carrying faint aromas of evening fires, fresh bread, and herbs from market stalls. You probably wouldn't survive the subtle politics of the night unobserved, patricians whispering secrets, merchants guarding their coins, and soldiers enforcing the quiet order Augustus demanded. Yet, there is a gentle rhythm to the city, a lull between ambition and action, where the heartbeat of Rome pulses quietly but insistently. You follow a narrow lane toward the Campus Martius, where soldiers march in measured formations. Shields scrape the cobbles, leather straps squeak, and the occasional low murmur of orders punctuates the air. These men, disciplined and alert, embody the strength of an empire forged in sweat, strategy, and relentless organization. Quirky as it may seem, some recruits hang tiny charms from their armor, wolf teeth, bronze figurines, or even carved wooden birds, believing divine favor will guide their actions. Historians still debate whether such rituals had any practical effect, but standing here, you feel the fusion of superstition and pragmatism that underpins Rome's enduring power. By midnight, lanterns flicker along the streets, casting long, wavering shadows across marble and stone. You pause at a quiet square where a few poets recite their verses to a sparse audience, the words drifting into the night like smoke. The city is alive, yet subdued, balancing the weight of ambition with the subtle art of daily life. You notice citizens tucking small offerings into shrine niches, whispering prayers to gods old and new. Quirky details, yes, but they reflect the human need for reassurance, guidance, and meaning amid the constant flux of empire. You continue past the Forum, now nearly deserted except for a few late merchants packing crates. The faint scent of spilled wine mingles with the earthy aroma of trampled soil and damp stone. The temples stand silent, shadows stretching across the squares, reminding you of Rome's deep intertwining of faith, culture, and power. Even in quiet, the city communicates ambition, control, and vigilance. Historians still argue whether Rome's reliance on spectacle and ritual strengthened the Republic or foreshadowed its eventual transition into empire, but here, under the soft glow of lanterns, the answer feels alive, complex, and tactile. You follow the path along the Tiber, where water laps gently against the banks. Boats float silently, their sails furled, carrying whispers of trade, exploration, and conquest. The rhythmic sound of water becomes hypnotic, almost soothing, yet hints at the vast networks of commerce and influence Rome is building. Quirky stories tell of early messengers using hollow reeds to carry coded notes along the river, an ingenious, if improbable, method of communication. You smile at the ingenuity, noting how necessity and curiosity drive progress in even the smallest ways. As midnight deepens, you notice shadows of guards moving along the city walls, their presence calm but vigilant. They represent the delicate balance between security and control, freedom and order, that underpins Rome's power. You breathe in the cool night air, the scent of damp stone, fire smoke, and faintly perfumed offerings, feeling the subtle tension between human ambition and natural order. Every element, the soldiers, citizens, poets, and traders, plays a role in sustaining the empire, each contributing to the invisible threads of history that pull the city forward. Finally, you rest on a quiet hilltop, gazing down at the softly glowing city. Lanterns flicker in distant windows, the Tiber gleams faintly, and the air carries a mix of smoke, earth, and faint salt. You feel the paradox of Rome, a city of profound order and subtle danger, of cultural brilliance and political tension, of superstition intertwined with strategy. And as the stars twinkle overhead, you sense the invisible pulse of history, the delicate, persistent rhythm that will carry this city and its empire through triumph, conflict, and centuries of unfolding legacy. The first light of dawn stretches across the horizon, brushing the Roman hills with muted gold. You trudge along the Via Appia, feeling the uneven stones beneath your feet and inhaling the faintly metallic scent of early morning dew mixed with horse sweat. You probably wouldn't survive a week traveling these roads without careful preparation. Bandits lurk in shadows, travelers misjudge distances, and the sudden flash of a soldier's attention can be either a warning or an invitation to danger. Yet the calm rhythm of movement, the soft murmur of distant waters, and the smell of freshly baked bread remind you that life persists even amidst empire building. You pass aqueducts arching gracefully over the landscape, carrying water to the city like silent veins of life. Farmers toil in the fields below, their backs bent in repetitive devotion, shaping the land with plough and hand. Quirky as it seems, some carry small charms of the lares, household gods, tucked into tunics or tied to plough handles, hoping divine protection ensures a fruitful harvest. Historians still debate the degree to which religion versus practical skill influenced Rome's agricultural success, but here, both feel inseparable, bound in rhythm and ritual. You trudge past a small village where tradesmen hammer bronze into tools and wheels, potters spin clay with quiet precision, and scribes etch letters on wax tablets. The air smells faintly of smoke, heated metal, and wet clay, a symphony of labor, creativity, and survival. Even mundane gestures hold historical weight. A carefully etched mark on a tablet can record a contract, a debt, or a law that ripples through generations. Quirky anecdotes tell of children sneaking small clay figurines into ovens, imagining they are miniature soldiers marching to protect the village, an odd yet endearing parallel to the city's real legions. By midday, you follow a caravan moving slowly along the road, merchants, soldiers, and families intertwined in a fragile, temporary community. Dust rises in lazy clouds, mingling with the aroma of roasted meats and freshly cut herbs. The cadence of carts and hooves creates a hypnotic rhythm, a reminder that Rome's influence extends not just through law or conquest, but through the steady, repeated acts of trade, travel, and communication. Historians still argue whether Rome's roads were built for commerce or control first, but the effect is clear. The city reaches outward, pulling distant lands into a web of connectivity. You pause near a small hill overlooking a river where scouts report movements of neighboring tribes. The tension is palpable yet subtle, the quiet calculation of strategy, the unspoken awareness that Rome's expansion is never without risk. Soldiers adjust armor, check weapons, and whisper prayers for protection. Quirky as it seems, some carry small carvings of wolves or eagles, thinking divine favor can influence even the outcome of observation and reconnaissance. You notice how human hope, superstition, and ingenuity intertwine to create a force both practical and legendary. As afternoon stretches into evening, you find yourself near a military camp. Tents flap lazily in the warm wind, soldiers polish armor, and engineers adjust siege equipment. The smells of iron, oil, and leather fill your senses. Every action, from repairing a wheel to perfecting a formation, contributes to the machinery of conquest, yet it is deeply human. Sweat, laughter, complaints, and camaraderie all ripple through the camp. Historians still debate whether Rome's military supremacy rested more on discipline or adaptability, but observing the camp, you understand it is both, an inseparable combination of human skill and calculated organization. As dusk descends, the soft hum of crickets and the distant roar of rivers fill the air. You pause on a small ridge, overlooking the plains. Lanterns flicker faintly in villages and camps, smoke curls from chimneys, and the land stretches endlessly under the violet sky. You feel the subtle tension of expansion, the human and natural forces shaping history, and the quiet majesty of an empire in motion. Rome's conquest is relentless, yet deeply human, and as stars pierce the night sky, you sense the fragile, persistent pulse that drives an empire forward. twilight drapes the city in a soft, violet haze, and you trudge along the stone-paved streets, feeling the warmth of the day slowly drain from the buildings. You probably wouldn't survive long here without understanding the subtle rhythms of Rome. Citizens whisper, merchants bargain fiercely, and the shadow of power looms over every forum and alley. Yet there is a calm, almost hypnotic quality to the city in these hours, a mixture of human ingenuity, ambition, and quiet observation that draws you in. You pass the Pantheon, its massive columns gleaming faintly in the fading light. Inside, priests prepare small offerings, incense curling upward, carrying the scent of resin, herbs, and candle smoke. Quirky as it seems, some devotees carry tiny figurines representing minor gods, tucked discreetly into their robes for personal favor. Historians still argue whether Rome's pantheon reflected genuine spiritual devotion or a political tool to unify diverse beliefs, but standing here, the lines feel blurred, both deeply human and deliberately orchestrated. You trudge toward a small marketplace where vendors are packing up their goods. Brightly colored fabrics are folded with care, amphorae of wine sealed tightly, and stacks of grain bundled for transport. The air is a tapestry of scents: fresh bread, olive oil, roasting meats, and the faint tang of fish. Even in this ordinary bustle, Rome's influence extends outward. Trade routes, agreements, and daily commerce link the city to distant lands. Quirky anecdotes tell of traders using coded markings on amphorae to identify origin or quality, an early form of branding or espionage, depending on how you see it. By evening, you approach the military barracks near the Tiber. Soldiers march with calm precision, their armor glinting faintly in lantern light. The rhythmic clatter of boots and shields seems almost meditative, a reflection of Rome's discipline and relentless organization. You notice small rituals, men whispering prayers, rubbing charms, or tracing symbols in the dust before training. Historians still debate how much superstition shaped military effectiveness, but standing here, it feels essential, a human counterbalance to the strict order of command. You follow a narrow alleyway leading to a quiet temple courtyard. The faint chanting of priests fills the air, mingling with the smell of incense and polished stone. Quirky as it seems, some acolytes believe shadows themselves carry omens, interpreting the flicker of candlelight or the angle of sunlight on marble as messages from the gods. You pause to watch a small group of children playing near a fountain, their laughter echoing softly, a reminder that daily life continues even amidst empire building, intrigue, and the weight of history. As night settles fully, the city hums quietly, lanterns flicker across plazas, distant fires send curling smoke into the violet sky, and the Tiber reflects faint starlight. You breathe deeply, taking in the scents of the city, smoke, herbs, bread, and faintly ironed metals. You feel the delicate balance between order and chaos, ambition and survival, superstition and strategy. Rome, alive and sprawling, seems both eternal and fragile. And as the stars shimmer above, you sense the invisible threads that bind citizens, soldiers, and leaders into the enduring pulse of history, guiding the empire forward through triumphs, tensions, and timeless human endeavor. The faint glow of dawn spills across the hills, painting the city in muted shades of gold and rose. You trudge through the streets, hearing the soft murmur of citizens beginning their day, the rhythmic clatter of horses' hooves, and the occasional creak of wooden carts. You probably wouldn't survive long navigating this world blindly. Political rivalries, petty thefts, and the ever-watchful eyes of city guards create an undercurrent of tension beneath the serene surface. Yet the morning carries a calm cadence, a rhythm that blends routine, vigilance, and quiet grandeur. You pass the bustling forum, alive with merchants, philosophers, and artisans. The scent of bread, roasted meats, and herbs mingles with the earthy aroma of wet stone from a recent rain. Quirky as it may seem, some scribes carry tiny charms tucked beneath their robes, hoping for luck in documenting the day's transactions and decrees. Historians still debate whether these small acts of superstition influenced decisions or merely provided psychological comfort, but standing here, the line between practicality and belief seems almost irrelevant. You trudge alongside soldiers drilling in a nearby courtyard. The scrape of shields and rhythmic thump of feet on cobblestones create a hypnotic cadence. Some recruits murmur prayers or tap charms against their breastplates, wolves, eagles, or tiny bronze figures intended to ward off misfortune. It is a strange mix of discipline, ritual, and quiet hope, a humanizing layer beneath the machinery of empire. By midday, you wander past aqueducts and fountains, where water flows in gentle murmurs across carefully carved stone channels. The gentle hum of life, farmers tending fields, children chasing animals, traders calling out prices, creates a vibrant tapestry of activity. Quirky as it may seem, merchants sometimes encoded secret marks on goods to signal origin, quality, or allegiance, a tiny whisper of intrigue amidst everyday commerce. Historians still debate how much of Rome's success came from engineering versus social structure, but both are palpable here, order and ingenuity intertwined seamlessly. As afternoon stretches on, you pass temples and shrines where citizens offer small tributes, coins, incense, or carved figurines. The air smells faintly of smoke and resin, carrying the quiet presence of devotion. You notice children weaving through columns, mimicking rituals, and whispering stories learned from elders. Even in these small, ordinary actions, Rome's cultural influence spreads subtly yet powerfully, binding the community together. By evening, you ascend the Capitoline Hill, gazing over the softly glowing city. Lanterns flicker across streets, rooftops shimmer in fading light, and the distant Tiber reflects twilight in silvery ripples. You sense the paradox of Rome, an empire of vast ambition and careful order, yet deeply human, fragile, and alive. Quirky habits, whispered prayers, and minute rituals all blend with strategy, law, and conquest, creating a living, breathing city. As stars punctuate the sky, you feel the pulse of history, carrying citizens, soldiers, and leaders forward in a delicate dance of survival, ambition, and ingenuity. Night has fallen over the city, and you trudge through Rome's quieter streets, the soft flicker of lanterns guiding your way. You probably wouldn't survive long wandering without caution, the shadows hold both mystery and subtle danger, but there is a calm in the air, a rhythm that draws you into the city's pulse rather than threatening it. The scent of cooled stone, faint smoke, and lingering herbs fills your senses, a reminder of the human presence that never truly sleeps. You pass the empty forum, its columns casting long, solemn shadows. The air is still except for distant murmurs, a poet reciting softly, guards shifting in quiet patrol, and the occasional clatter of a cart returning late. Quirky as it may seem, some citizens leave small charms tucked into cracks in the walls overnight, tiny offerings to household gods or spirits to ensure safety. Historians still debate whether such acts were symbolic superstition or vital expressions of daily belief, but in the quiet of night, they feel significant, an intimate reflection of human hope amid vast structures of power. You continue past the Palatine Hill, where marble villas glint faintly under the moonlight. Shadows stretch across gardens and courtyards, hiding secrets, quiet conversations, and the hum of life that persists after the day ends. Soldiers march in measured silence, their armor gleaming faintly, footsteps precise and controlled. Quirky as it may seem, some carry tiny protective charms, a carved eagle, a wolf tooth, or a small bronze figurine, reminders that even the strongest institutions rely on human vulnerability, superstition, and ingenuity. Walking along the Tiber, you notice boats drifting quietly, reflecting the moon's light in rippling silver. Traders, scouts, and travelers rest for the night, while distant fires send soft smoke curling into the sky. The city seems serene, yet every lantern, every guard, and every whispered conversation carries a weight of vigilance. Historians still debate how Augustus maintained peace while consolidating power, balancing subtle coercion with cultural and military brilliance. Observing the quiet now, you sense the careful orchestration of stability, an empire held together as much by psychology and perception as by law or force. By midnight, the city hums with muted life, late artisans packing up tools, distant guards on watch, and the faint aroma of bread from night bakers still lingering. You pause atop a small hill, gazing at the sprawling panorama. Lanterns flicker like tiny stars mirroring the heavens above, the Tiber winds gracefully through the city, and the air carries the mingled scents of earth, smoke, and stone. The paradox of Rome is evident here. Immense power and fragile humanity coexist in every shadow, every column, every whisper. Quirky rituals, superstition, strategy, and relentless ambition combine into a living, breathing force. As the stars shine softly, you feel the pulse of centuries, the invisible threads connecting citizens, soldiers, poets, and rulers, all contributing to Rome's story. The city is both eternal and fleeting, majestic yet deeply human, a testament to ambition, ingenuity, and survival. Tonight, the streets are calm, yet history is awake, carrying forward every hope, fear, and act of human determination. And as you finally rest, you sense that the city, like history itself, continues to breathe, expand, and endure long after the last lantern flickers out.